He wants to be the Prime Minister of New Zealand after only 6 years in Parliament. He has a personal wealth estimated around $50 million, but he says it's time for a change, and he promises a national party with vision and new direction. But what does he really think, and what does he really stand for? Well, tonight we're joined by John Key, Leader of the Opposition.
Hell of it.
Hey John, how are you?
Well, thank you. Yeah, very well.
Happy with the polls?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, those sort of leads are encouraging, and I think they back up what we've been talking about, that there's a strong mood out there for change. But look, polls are what they are. They can change an awful lot. Just put it in perspective, the TV3 poll that had us 14 points out in front a couple of weeks ago, the same poll a year ago, we were 3 points behind. So a hell of a lot can change.
Now let's get straight into that. How worried are you about New Zealanders going overseas?
I'm very worried. If you have a look at the numbers, 77,000 permanently left for overseas last year. That's the highest level.
How do you know they permanently left?
Well, that declares permanent long-term departures by the data that they give. So they haven't gone on holiday, they've packed up and gone. Now, so the bottom line was net migration was still positive last year, 82,000 people came in, but that net gain is 5,000, not very much compared to, say, the 50,000 in 2002. So the permanent long-term departures were the worst they've been for 20 years. So I think, you know, we should be worried, and they're going to Australia, highest numbers, I think, ever going to Australia. Actually, I know it might be 20 years, highest number for 20 years to Australia. So why do we worry? Well, only because they're well educated as a general rule. You know, hard working. You don't go to Australia to go on the dole, you actually can't get that for 2 years. So they're going over there to make a contribution to the Australian economy. We've educated them, and frankly, we've got a massive skill shortage in our own economy. So
aren't they doing what you did?
Yep, they could be. The difference when I went, and actually I'm not bemoaning people going. I mean, look, for lots of professions it makes a huge amount of sense to go and get some.
Certainly did very well for you.
Yeah, it worked for me. Doctors, you know, lots of specialists go overseas, and it's been 3 or 4 years, and it makes total sense. I'm just worried about the fact that they won't come back. We've now got 500,000 in Australia. We've got 1 million New Zealanders living overseas. We've got the worst brain drain of any country in the developed world. I mean, at some point we've got to sit up and say, well, why are they going? And
why are they going?
Income, I think, primarily. I mean, income's not the only driver. I mean, don't get me wrong. Great environment to live in, confident that your nation's going well, sense of a good place to live, community.
Isn't it also just the sheer size of population? I mean, we're a small country, and in any country that has a small population, people migrate. That's why people leave Alabama to go to New York. That's why people leave Adelaide to go to Melbourne. You know, that's why people leave Dorset to go to London. Yep. You know, we're never going to. How are you going to actually make Auckland as attractive in any capacity unless you increase the population by 10 million?
I mean, partly that's correct, but I mean, I guess the point is, if you take that view to an extreme, what you're really saying is Auckland and New Zealand is a giant educational facility for Australia. I've actually much greater ambitions for New Zealand than that. So, I mean, I just don't think that cuts it.
What I'm saying is that Auckland is always going to be limited by the fact that it has 1.8 million people. Now, if you want to go overseas and make it like you did, or like other people did, there's a very small base that you can do that in New Zealand. And so always by going to Australia or England or America, the chances of you having a greater aspiration is going to go up. We're never going to solve that, are we?
Well, I reckon we can actually. I think we've got to do a few things. I mean, firstly, those base incomes have to come up a bit. And you've got a lot of people earning somewhere between $40,000 and probably $80,000 a year, trying to fund a house, raise a family off and pay off their student loan, you name it. But their income, they're not going forward, they're effectively going backwards. So they look at Australia, where there's open immigration, they have every New Zealander has a free option if you like. So they can go over there, they get $15,000 for a first home buyer's grant effectively between the state and central government. They pay way less taxes than they would in New Zealand relative to their income. They get 8% put in their superannuation account. I mean, all I'm saying is the deal looks a bit better. And so we can change that if we can make New Zealand, I mean, we've got to make New Zealand more productive. I'm not arguing it's easy, but there are lots of things we can do.
You say they pay less taxes relative to their income.
Yep.
So you're going to drop our taxes. Are you going to raise our income? Is minimum wage going to go up?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not opposed to the minimum wage going up. I think there's actually
But are you for the minimum wage going up?
Oh, yeah, look, I don't want people living in you know, overt poverty. And I mean, I'd rather people weren't on the minimum wage. I mean, I'd just rather that they earned more money and were paid more. And I think employers have got to take a sensible view to that, which is, sure, you know, starting people on the minimum wage might make sense to get them in the door, but bottom line, we've got to pay them decent. decent sort of incomes.
Speaking of incomes and wages, let's talk about your income just
Yep.
for a little bit, because, you know, we have to.
Yeah, sure.
Now, in the recent article in the Sunday Star Times, you were connected to the shark foreign exchange dealer Andrew Krager. We
Yep.
all know this.
Yep.
He made a lot of money at the expense
Yep.
of New Zealand currency.
Yep.
It went down in the history books of the
Yep.
stock exchange, all that sort of thing. You are on record as saying you don't recall if you made money betting against the New Zealand currency.
Oh,
Really?
no. I mean, not. I
With him?
couldn't recall whether he was selling or buying, because he did both. He had big trades selling and he
Surely,
had big
as a
trades
New
buying.
Zealander,
Yep.
you would remember at the stage when you go, all right, I'm betting against the New Zealand currency now. Surely that would have some imprint on the memory.
Oh, well, he would have done both, absolutely. But he had two really big plays. One was a big selling trade, which I'm pretty sure he did before I joined Bankers Trust in 1987. And he had a big buying trade, actually, which I'm pretty sure he did most of that with us. From memory, he did the buying bit with us. But he did both, and I made money both ways, you know, buying and selling. But I don't see that as, I mean, that's not a negative. I mean, the currencies can't be manipulated by one individual person.
They almost were.
Yeah, well, only because the economic fundamentals argued that. I mean, banks actually, like I work for the banks play a huge liquidity role. I mean, if Andy Krieger was to come in today and smash the Kiwi down, you know, 30 points and we went to 50 cents, New Zealand exporters would be cheering from the roof. So it's not unpatriotic to want the Kiwi dollar to be lower.
Do you think it actually stands you in good stead with, you know, the recession that seems to be coming globally?
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about the financial backdrop. I mean, you've got housing prices starting to fall. That's been the driver of consumption, so likely mum and dad are going to spend less. The problem we've got is we've got a really difficult position. We're actually sandwiched between low growth and actually high inflation in New Zealand. So I think the challenge is I don't think the Reserve Bank will cut interest rates. In fact, actually Australia raised last week and New Zealand may well raise.
I just want to talk about your memory for a little bit longer, because
Sure.
it's one of the things that used to annoy me greatly about Don Brash.
Yeah.
Is that he rocked out the line every single time. I can't recall. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I can't recall. And it,
Yeah.
it seems that you may be going down a similar road. Not fully, but you also don't remember how you felt about the Springbok tour.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Well, no, the question that they asked me about was whether I supported them coming. You know, so you got to get the question right. I didn't go and protest one way or the other on the Springbok tour. You know, I've already said, look, in principle, I wasn't unhappy that they were there, but I didn't go and protest against it, and I didn't actually go to any of the games. So, yeah, I mean, I was sort of somewhat ambivalent about it. I'm opposed to, you know, clearly opposed to apartheid, but, you know, was I meteorically upset about the fact that the Springboks were there at that time? Back in 1981, I doubt it. But I wasn't actively involved in a protest movement on it.
Do you remember saying in 2003 you thought New Zealand should send troops to Iraq?
Well, I didn't say that actually. Again, you know, you just got to get the facts right. Which was that I never said we should send troops to Iraq. They argue that out of a story in the Rodney Times, which had a couple of quotes from me, but not quotes from me saying send troops to Iraq. I said that we should support the Americans.
Blood is thicker than water, that we should
Yeah.
stand by our allies.
Yeah, and I stand by what I said, which is that in my view we were right to support the coalition of the willing. That doesn't mean we send troops. Yeah, it's a very different thing. If I'd said send troops, I mean, if the guy wrote down the quotes I had, you'd think the most important would be that one, he would write that down, right? And there is no quote from that, so people can draw their own inference. My view was we shouldn't have bagged them. Helen Clark actually did, and had to write a letter of apology because she decided it was wrong, and refused.
Hang on, it was wrong.
And refused to wrong in the way what she said about George Bush, not necessarily about whether the war
What do you
was
think
wrong.
of George Bush?
Well, you know, he's had a pretty rough run. I mean, look, there's no argument that the war in Iraq's going well. It's clearly not. There's no argument the US economy is in good shape. It's clearly not. The only one caveat I put on all this stuff is, you know, I was in the States around 9/11. The feeling within the American public of wanting to make sure that, you know, they felt they were under attack. And the reason why I thought the coalition of willing could be supported was I actually think there was a legal argument, which there is under the UN, that in fact, if you believe you're being attacked, you can actually fight
Come on,
back.
John.